So wonderful to see everybody. Well, we're gonna honor everybody's time, and you know, my Indian time is right on time. So I will let folks get seated. We had a little fun with this. We were trying to think of a name, and so we, of course, you saw on our card, we named this Between Two Cacti. And building, of course, on the fun show Between Two Ferns. How many have heard of the Between Two Ferns? Okay, good. So at least Between Two Cacti, you're like, oh yeah. But we initially called it Between Two Cactuses, and we knew there'd be an English teacher in the audience that would be like, it's actually Between Two Cacti. So we went with the grammatical approach. Oh, well, Yate, welcome everybody. My name is Justin Huenemann. I am the new president and CEO of First Peoples Fund. Raise your hand if you've heard of First Peoples Fund. Excellent, excellent. My son didn't even raise his hand. Thanks. Thanks, Kian, for that. But at least he showed up. So one of my kids showed up. Thank you. So we are delighted. We have a number of staff members. If you're a staff member, really quickly, could I have you wave, stand up? They're right here. This is the choir of the church choir sitting. Natalie, Dr. Laura Evans, Sonia Paul, Jaron Benio, Fox Spears. So this is just a sampling of our wonderful 26 staff that are now scattered throughout the country. We still have our headquarters in Rapid City, South Dakota. And we have a special guest among us. Founder and long time for 26 years as president of the First Peoples Fund. And we're going through, as a lot of organizations, whatever you want to call it, transition. But we've been fortunate to retain Lori as founder and senior fellow. And one of the exciting projects that she's focusing on is interviewing, documenting many of the community spirit honorees, the Jennifer Easton honorees that we've been doing for now over 25 years. And we have two of those community spirit honorees here this afternoon who we'll introduce in just a minute. So she's documenting video, doing video. We're going to be creating a podcast. So lots of things coming through that. And if you're not familiar with our community spirit honorees, these are the cultural bearers that you all kind of recognize are the knowledge keepers. They're the ones who are carrying on the traditions and the teachings and the practices that have been passed on for generations. And they give of themselves selflessly. And you just, they're that grandma or that elder that you just want to hug. And then here's, to me, the final key barometer of a community spirit honoree. As soon as you honor them and they do receive a little financial award with it, they say, oh no, not me. Please give it to somebody else. This is that constant giving of self. And so we have now honored close to 120 community spirit honorees from Alaska, Hawaii, and throughout the country. Yes, thank you. All right. Well, these are kind of funky chairs. Yeah. Okay. We also want to recognize just a few folks in the room. We're joined here, I see also the Maxwell Hanrahan Foundation. I think you want to stand up, raise your hand. One of the founders there, Dell Maxwell, has joined us. They're from the Bay Area. And Rebecca, thank you for coming. We just saw each other at lunch about a half hour ago. So. Of course, our friends, the Margaret A. Cargill Philanthropies. I see Scott back there. Scott, thank you for coming. One of our important supporters out of the Twin Cities. And if you're not familiar with that story, an amazing story of Margaret A. Cargill and giving again of herself and her wealth to support Indigenous artists throughout the country. Marshall Bowl, Director of Museum of International Folk Art, is here. Shyla Spicer. Oh, there you go. Hi. She's like, how did you get me on my list? Shyla Spicer is going to be joining us if she's not here, from the National Native Arts and Culture Foundation out of the Northwest area. And I also saw Dr. Robert Martin, IAIA President. Are you there? He is. Thank you, sir, for coming. Ron and Elaine Solomon out of Albuquerque, right here, longtime supporters. I think everybody probably in the room knows Ron. So, an amazing mentor to me for over the years, always giving me good advice on things, and so I always appreciate that.
I always said, don't do it.
And yeah, don't do it. That's exactly. So, and Co-Art Center, are you here, folks from the Co-Art Center? Yay! Thank you for joining us. I also see we have a special guest. Susan Harjo is here. Joy Harjo's here. Poet laureate. Jewelers. Oh, wow, lots of folks. This is great. So we're gonna jump in, and just really appreciate everyone coming this afternoon. So this is our inaugural Between Two Cacti conversation with artists, and you may notice up here we have a little bit of a gender imbalance, and we apologize. Next time we will get 3 more men to balance out Jody and her power and her strength. So we'll get that right next time. And, you 3 are going to have to hang in there with Jody. So let me introduce our wonderful artists, our guests here, our relatives that have all, in some form, been a part of the First Peoples family, either as artists and business leadership fellows, cultural capital fellows, or our most prestigious, which is the Jennifer Easton Community Spirit Honorees, which 2 of our guests are. So, my goal today is to introduce them, but I'm not going to read a long resume. I hope that if you're interested more, I know most of you know the folks here, but you can go to our website or their websites and learn more about their work. These are prolific artists, award-winning artists, and so I'd be here all day if I was reading just even Jody's bio, let alone everybody else's. So we're going to keep it brief. To my left is Jody Naranjo-Turipa. She's Taylor from the Santa Clara Pueblo, and she was one of our CSA honorees in 2014, and also one of our former board members. Ms. Naranjo-Turipa was the first female potter ever to win Best of Show here at the Santa Fe Indian Market, and continues to be an amazing force with her work. It just makes me think also the fact that at one point we didn't even have a basket category in SWIA, so we're seeing lots of changes. Of course, her pottery can be found in permanent collections literally throughout the world, in places most notably like the Smithsonian Institution of the National Museum of the American Indian, in galleries all over. And so please just give her a warm welcome. Thank you, Jody, for joining us this afternoon. To her left, a new, young, and up-and-coming amazing artist, George Alexander. He's in Muscogee Creek. And we are fortunate to have him this year as a 2024 Able Fellow. And he resides here in Santa Fe, New Mexico. He enjoys exploring contemporary indigenous culture and aims to stir emotions and provoke thought with his paintings. And he did have 2 in the preview show. And I asked him, how was it going? And he said, I sold the big one. Next to him is Mr. Rico, Worl, and we just happen to have 2 Alaska natives, which is awesome, and I see you have brought some friends with you. So he's an interdisciplinary artist, which is a fancy word for saying does lots of really cool things with lots of different mediums. He resides in Juneau, Alaska, and he was a Able Fellow in 2018. Rico's family and the folks where he comes from have lived and worked and created in the challenging climate of the Northwest Coast for many, many years. He seeks to honor those values and traditions while exemplifying contemporary art and what it means to live a healthy, modern, indigenous lifestyle. He's the founder of Trickster Company, which strives to promote innovative indigenous design. And if you're not familiar with Rico, again, go to our website. You'll find he's just is exploring all sorts of forms, and is just an amazing artist in different ways. And so one of those where you can't fully just sort of put him in a box, if you will. He's a wonderful artist. So thank you, Rico, for joining us today. And at the end, you'll have to make sure we get your booth number so folks can check you out. And finally, we have Golga Oscar. And Golga is Inupiaq from Inupiaq Nation in Alaska. He also is an artist that utilizes many different mediums, be it photography, quill work, weaving, textile, works with lots of different skins and animals from his region. He was an Able Fellow in 2023, and this year he is a CSA Honoree 2024. So congratulations, Golga. Most of the folks that are CSA honorees tend to be a bit more in the elder range, and so the fact that Golga, so it's an honoree or an award that you don't nominate yourself. You're nominated by your community. You're recognized by your community. So it was amazing that Golga, he's an amazing artist himself, but also recognized in your community. So what an honor that they lifted you up as one of our community spirit honorees. So yes, okay. So I have about 75 questions, and so we'll see if I get through about 3 of them. But I want to start with Jody, because here we are. We're at Indian Market, and I think this is Jody's probably second one or something. But she has seen a lot of changes. She lives in the area. So I'm just curious, Jody, from your standpoint, as you think back to where Indian Market was, and now you've got other markets, pathways, and the free market, and all sorts of things going on. What do you reflect on when you come back and you see all of the things going on? What are some of the changes you've seen, good or bad? What kind of comes to your mind?
I think one of the most exciting parts of Indian Market right now for me is to see all of the young artists and all of the different approaches that they're taking towards art and how they integrate the past and what they see for the future for themselves and how they're approaching their vision in art. That's really exciting to see. I really appreciate the Northwest Coast art, especially, and I've seen such incredible changes for the Northwest Coast. Originally, when I started with Indian Market, there was only Southwest Indian artists here. So that almost everything you saw was very acceptable, one, very traditional, and also with one thought, one path in mind, traditional artwork. Then all of a sudden you start seeing different people coming in from the Midwest, from the East Coast, from the far Northwest Coast, Alaska, and boom, there's all sorts of art coming in, and it's so exciting to see what all of the young people are doing. It is so extremely exciting. Because if you go in and start talking to them and have a little bit of a conversation with them, it's just like going back into history for themselves at the present day, and what they see in the past, and what they saw their parents and their grandparents doing, and how they're incorporating that art. So very exciting. So I'm asking each and every one of you, if you have time, just for a split second, talk to some of the younger artists or the older people. Because at that point, you're going to get such an amazing history on who they are and what they're doing and what direction they're going. Or maybe they're not going anywhere except in that they like what they're doing.
Thank you. So that's your mic, those two, and then we'll just make sure, and if we can hear in the back, wave, and we'll make sure we hold the mic a little bit closer. So building on that, George, I'll go with you, because you're probably one of the younger, not only on the panel, but you're one of the younger artists that she's referring to. I don't know what number of shows you've done, but when you think back of SWAIA and you run into folks and artists that you maybe have looked up to, what comes to your mind when you think of SWAIA and what Jody just said about the younger people coming up? How do you feel about SWAIA and your experience?
I'm tremendously grateful for a community to have that will uplift these artists. Nowhere else have I seen something like this. SWAIA, The Herd, all of them, they're great places to develop a platform. So that way, whenever you go out into the world, you're well equipped with the information and the dialogue and the skill set to actually say something and show the best way you can to show off your community. I think that, growing up here in Santa Fe, I got here in 2009 to go to the Institute of American Indian Arts, and I remember doing my first market. And I think it was like 2014 or 2015, somewhere right around there. And I was nervous as all get out. Like I didn't think that I was going to sell anything. I didn't think that I was going to be good or anything, But the community really supported me, and to see older artists really take a great, good sense of my work means a lot to me. I'm fortunate enough to have great mentors in my life, and it wouldn't be that way if it wasn't for great institutions like First Peoples Fund, SWAT, all of it. It's really cool. I've been to the Miami Art Basel. I've studied in Florence. I've been everywhere, and it's way more competitive out there. People don't really look out for you as much as they should, and I think that we as Native people really take care of our own, so it's good.
Thank you. I'm going to maybe pass it to Golga. I heard him, George, you said that mentors and people you look up to. Golga, who are some of the folks that have inspired you, mentors perhaps, that you look up to and have inspired your work and approach? What have mentors meant to you?
This is my second year of SWAIA this year, and last year was my first year. But before those years, I was under the II art market, which was amazing. And being surrounded by artists was very inspiring. Mentors, I've been taking every opportunity that I hosted, workshops, for example, and learning how to do quill work and incorporating that into my work has been, it changed up the level. And being part of the art market and the art world is just so special. And yeah, especially being from being an Alaska Native that grew up in a village that is 4,000 miles away, and yeah, sometimes it's challenging to even find inspiration out there. But having mentors down here has been an honor and also a blessing. We don't really do a lot of artwork up there because due to Western impact and cultural genocide. So I'm the only family member in my family that does a lot of artwork that goes above and beyond. I think back in 2018 is when I started to do some beadwork, and that's what I learned from my fellows, friends from IA. But yeah.
Okay, great. Let's build on that. We didn't ask them to sit together. So Rico, tell us a little bit about your work. I introduced you as being interdisciplinary. So one, maybe you could share what does that mean for you, and two, sort of, I know that the idea of personal and cultural identity is huge in your work. So tell us a little bit about how your personal or cultural identity influences your work.
So yeah, I think recently I've been using the term like creative professional as my title, I guess. I don't know. And with the focus of just like, trying to be open to any projects, being open to like hearing what people in the community are interested in or want to explore, and that's kind of just led me to just create whatever I kind of feel like when I can afford to, anyways. And what was the second question?
Oh, just in terms of how your work is influenced by your personal cultural identity, how that comes out.
Yeah, I think cultural identity is like, it's for as creatives, I think for all of us, like culture is integral to art. Like art is integral to culture. It's not something that you can just like separate, and we put them in galleries, but they're still tied to us, and they're still tied from us to our communities. And I think that's an important thing.
Just real quick, when you introduce yourself, do you use the term artist? Go ahead.
Sorry. My grandma just reminded me, which actually was almost the same question you asked. You said, she wants, so, Sanat Kretwasam, Lukakari Katsati, Ish Ashandukedi, just Katach. So, my name is Lanat, and I'm Tlingit, and I want to recognize my father and my grandmother's clan, the Ashandukedi.
Thank you. Thank you, Grandma. Right on. Yeah, just one quick. What do you think of the term artist to describe you?
I don't think of myself as an artist. I just think of myself as a person that is hitting the table to make pottery right at the moment. And it's really interesting to think about being an artist, because what is a word? What does it represent? I think for most Indian people, especially potters, it's so much a matter of, originally, pottery was very traditional and very much used for storage and cookware. So that's what I grew up with. So that's how I see myself, as something that is producing a piece of work that is going to be used. I barter with a lot of my micaceous pots for things that I want with other artists, if that's what you want to call them. But I'm not sure where the word artist fits in, because it's so much a part of who we are in the culture, in the tradition that we live in.
Yes. Yeah, what do you think, George, when you hear that term? You're an artist.
Well, it just depends on who I'm talking to. You got a lot of money, call me whatever you want. I think that, I do think that it does depend on who you are actually talking to. Like, you're right, Jody, that, art coincides with our identity so well that it's hard to distinguish what an artist actually is. But I do know what art is. It's not so much about the objects, or in my opinion, I don't think that it's necessarily about making the object either. It's about that conversation you are having with that object. And, you can talk about an object in many different ways. You can talk about, just for example, this bottle, what it's holding water. Why is it holding water? What is the conceptual thought behind that? What about the space that it's interacting in? And I think we as Indigenous people inherently understand this. And so whenever you're making your pottery, you're having that conversation with it. And so in that sense, yes, making the object is important, but the object itself is how we carry our future, or carry the conversation to our future, because they'll outlive us by 20 lifetimes if they're taken care of. But I digress. I didn't really answer the question. I think that, when I talk to people that are outside of the community, they say, this is an artist. I don't take no offense to that. That's just the way that they interpret the way that I am. But when I'm at home, nobody's like, hey, that's the artist. Or maybe they do. It doesn't matter. All that matters is what's being communicated, is I guess what I'm trying to get across.
Rico, when you think of this term success as an artist, what does that mean? How do you define success for yourself in this space of, we have ribbons and awards and accolades, but for you, what defines success?
A lot of the products that I create are a lot of times made for the youth, and so I think the peak of success for me was one day I was just like, this wasn't even in my hometown. I was driving down the road, and I just see this young kid bouncing a basketball, a Trickster Company basketball, down the road, and just seeing the youth just, using it the way it should be, just having access to their culture. That was, yeah.
Golga, how about you? What does success mean to you? You've had certain accolades and recognition, but for you, how do you define success as a Yupik person?
I guess the way that I define success is putting my work out there to bring recognition about my people. And behind that is also educating people of Inupiaq culture and what Inupiaq is, because when it comes to showcasing my work or these shows, my main goal is to represent my people, and then from that, the way that I see it being publicized about of what Inupiaq art is, that's what I define success. It's like I'm not only doing it for myself, but I'm also doing it for my people. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's probably across the board here. Jody, what role does, when you think about this ever-growing field of Indigenous artists and practices and creative making, what role does it play in our broader society today? We're a small population, but what is our Indigenous art forms? What role do they play in our society today?
Question, but I want to go back to the question that you asked the two young men at the end. Success, I don't think about success in my head unless I can see a piece of work that can speak to me. And I'll give you one example that occurred this past 3 months. 3 o'clock in the morning, I woke up, I couldn't go to sleep, picked up a Membrace book, and I started looking at the designs of the Membrace people that lived, 1,200 years ago? And I started looking at their designs and I thought, that's simple. Gosh, that's beautiful, that's great. And I saw some of the imagery that was so frightening. And I thought, but where is that coming from? What is so important in their culture that they had to have this particular imagery? And so I started breaking things down. It took me about 2 months to figure out this very simplistic design that they had and how they had to work it out to make it uniform. And I had chosen a ram design that they had put on a bowl. And finally figured out how they had worked it out. And so then I started manipulating the design. And when I had manipulated the design, I had put legs on the rams, which they did not have. And then all of a sudden I could hear in my head drums playing. And I thought, am I crazy or what? Because I can hear the rams dancing because we have a ram dance in Santa Clara, Pueblo. So I thought for a very long time in terms of what that said and did to me, and I thought that's what success is what it's saying to you and how it provokes a thought in your head, because that's history, that's part of you, that's who you are. But still, being able to imitate it maybe, and to modify it, and this is what we, I think, as Indian people do. We take a look at tradition and we modify it. We modify it to what we think the world wants to see sometimes, or what we want to see. And I think that is what success is.
Great. Thank you. Well, I am curious to hear just your perspectives on whether you think about your own form of art or in general Indigenous art, what you feel it plays in our society today. Be it, so whoever wants to, well, I'm going to have all of you answer that one, so you can speak to it from your own art or if just in general, but what role does it have in our society?
I think that I believe that everybody is an artist, regardless if you're a mechanic or engineer or anything, because like I said earlier, it's the conversation that you're having with that object. And so it takes somebody to make something in order to develop the world. So whenever you're doing that, you're practicing your art. And so, I think that plays a great deal on the way that the world is shaped. And so it's we as people that identify as artists or participate in our creative field like painting, cinematography, sculpture, performative arts, what have you, I think that it's very important that we hold true to the obligation of making the world better. Yeah, especially right now. I mean, the world is completely polarized. It's ridiculous. You walk outside and you can feel the tension. Well, not right now because it's like badass outside. It's so cool. But you turn on the TV and it seems like it's a mess outside. So I think that we as a collective need to hold the obligation of focusing on our creativity to make the world better.
How about you, Rico?
I'm a big fan of Star Trek, and one of the things that the Vulcans say is infinite diversity and infinite combinations, and like I feel like it's a big part of our role to be able to bring our stories out there, and the more diverse perspectives, then the more solutions we have to the challenge that we have in the world.
I'm a big fan of that.
What was the question?
Golga, so when you think about your work, or you think about this whole area of indigenous arts and creative making, what role does it have in our bigger society or the world? What does your work, what role does it play, if you will, in society?
The way that I define, I mean not define, but the way that it plays a major role in my life is cultural arts saved my life from this Western toxicity. And also healing from this cultural genocide. I feel like art is a major role in many cultures because we were gifted these skills by the Creator for us to use until end of the world. And that's one of the statements that I mainly don't forget from the elder, Paul John Gangil from Chuksuk. He was a chief back in the day, but he mentioned that meaning we have to use, we were gifted this culture for us to use until the end of the world. But yeah, that's how I see art.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'd like to make my statement on your the issue that is before us right now. I think that it's really important for us to be able to see our artwork in a way where others that are on the outside are able to see what we're doing. I do very traditional work. I do middle-of-the-road traditional work. I do very contemporary work. I do very political and social issue pieces. So I have a show coming up in Minneapolis, and I'm doing an installation piece on Obama. And right now I'm working on a piece on Trump. And so this gives me a different perspective on how I see things and how people are going to see the integration of traditional work and the political scene present at the present time, which is really chaotic. But it gives us a different view on what we're able to see. So that I get very excited when I'm thinking about what is happening in the present world and what can I do to present my views. And I present my views through my work, through pottery, and through the imagery that I place on my pottery, so that it becomes sometimes very acceptable, sometimes it isn't. Sometimes people have different views, political views, social views, and they come and they question me, and sometimes they become very annoyed and very angry with what they are seeing in terms of the imagery that I have presented to them. So that is what I'm seeing in terms of art in the American Indian art world.
Yeah. It made me think of something, and maybe I'll pick on Golga. I mean, this idea of criticism or critique of your work. Have you ever encountered, all of you, critique of your work or maybe a criticism? How do you deal with any form of criticism or critique of your work?
Wait, what?
Yeah, exactly. What? Have you ever, ever read an article or something that was sort of either critiquing or maybe even quote unquote criticizing your work? How did you ever deal with any sort of critique or criticism of your work?
I think I've received a lot of criticism from lower 48 people. I mean, non-Indigenous people from the East Coast or like, the West Coast about utilizing fur.
Oh.
And, and then I would educate them that this is our main source of clothing. And also, behind criticism, I don't really take it seriously if it came from an elder. I like to show my work. Every time when I complete a parka or like, a bag, I would show my work to the elder and they would fix me. I mean, correct my mistakes and tell me do this and tell me do that. And yeah, so
that's a good constructive part. Yeah, that's awesome. How about you, Rico? You ever get any critique of your work, and what was your sort of response to it?
My response is, I'm just fine. I think I have more stuff to do. I've got more work to do. And I'm just doing my best to represent my part in the world. And people can have critiques, and I'm just going to keep going. I want to make some more stuff.
George, have you ever been critiqued?
More than once. Laura Evans. I'm just kidding. Laura actually was a professor of mine. She never critiqued my work. She gave great opinions. So I guess as far as like outside of the academic world, it's really actually hard to find criticism. And I do embrace criticism because I'm not actually perfect, believe it or not. I mean, I'm close, but not quite. And so whenever somebody actually has the courage to talk about your piece and tell their actual opinion, I think that that's important to listen to. Now, whether or not you're going to use or implement that criticism, that's different. Not every criticism is good. Like today, for example, I had somebody come into my booth and they thought that my work was overpriced because it was acrylic. And I was like, all right, yeah, tight. See you later. But they had the courage to say something, and you just gotta respect their opinion. That's all criticism really is. So, yeah.
You brought up a bit of an idea of still the idea of traditional, maybe modern, or how do you, and this, you're all sort of in this space, how do you navigate the balance between sort of traditional, contemporary, traditional innovation? There's sort of this push sometimes to feel like you've got to create this most exciting new piece on the innovative side, but then there's the piece that you were talking, we still come from our communities, the teachings, the practices. So how do you all navigate this idea or this balance between traditional and maybe even the creative process, the innovation process?
With me, it all depends on the circumstances. It all depends on the circumstances for me. If I'm going to barter a piece, then I make some traditional cookware. One. If I personally see something that I'm interested in, then I start looking into it and I start investigating what that is all about. Then I might and might not decide to work with it and do something in regards to what I've seen or heard. And it's real interesting because I'll give you a quick little story on a particular workshop that I was doing in San Francisco. I was teaching a class And this young man came up to me and he started talking to me about his life. And he said, oh, by the way, I'm going to Madrid, New Mexico. And then later on, he said, he had gotten in contact with me, and he said, I went to Madrid, but listen, this is what happened. I caught the train from San Francisco to Albuquerque, and when I was coming into Albuquerque, I jumped off the train because I knew that they were going to check the train. And I had a suitcase. I threw my suitcase off the train, and I looked at it, and I thought, should I jump or should I not? And boy, that was getting my head spinning. And so I thought, trains, I've always wanted to do trains. And and that's the one and only time I did a train piece on my pottery. But then he decided to jump, and he came out all bruised and black. He hitchhiked to Madrid, New Mexico. And there was a big parade going on. And he said, they were waving to me, and there was my partner across the road that was waving to me. And I said, oh, wonderful. And I said, what happened? And he said, we spent a couple of days together, and my pink suitcase was gone. And I thought, wow, pink suitcase. That was another magic word for me. So I decided to do a train, a man sitting on a flat car with a pink suitcase. And so I had a show at the Smithsonian, and the Smithsonian purchased a piece. So this is what I'm talking about in terms of what you see and what you do with your artwork. And that was one of the most special pieces because I saw the person, I put the person into my work, and there it is at the Smithsonian. But, you know, it's really exciting to see what you can do in terms of modern art, traditional art, and I do a lot of very traditional work also because I think it's beautiful. I think that all of those stages are incredible because it works your mind to the point where you feel full with life.
Thank you.
Could you repeat the question?
Sure. I'm just curious how you balance perhaps the traditional elements of your work or the teachings, those pieces with the idea of also the sort of the tension of being innovative, creative.
I don't. I'm just kidding. I don't know. You know, I didn't really grow up that traditional in a sense. You know, I didn't. My dad was a preacher at Montezuma Indian Baptist Church, and my mother was a Sunday school director there. And so in that aspect, if you ever gone to like especially a Creek church, it's a very different thing than what most people think. And it's a beautiful community. And I don't necessarily consider myself a Christian anymore, but those were the traditions that I was brought up with. And you know, it took me a long time to actually feel comfortable even saying that, especially whenever you know the atrocities that have happened because of Christian influence. But it steered me in a way to where I can embrace my own sort of aspect in life, you know, find where I feel comfortable, you know. I believe that it's the world that told me I was Creek. I came out as a human being, but then through living, I was embraced by Muscogee Creek culture. And, you know, through the everyday living and just, I don't know, growing up in Creek country, you don't realize how Creek you are until you leave, you know? And that's sort of how I found out, like, how Creek I was. And if you look at my work, you know, it doesn't necessarily look Creek, it looks like modern art. And that's where the modernity of my life kind of is really shown. I kind of hold my culture a little too close to my heart, and I hardly ever really express it into my art because it means a lot to me, especially whenever you don't really know what that means, you know. I don't want to, you know, make a mistake and like say something that I shouldn't have, or shared something that I shouldn't have. So I try to conserve my own spiritual and traditional things to myself, and those who know me are fortunate enough to see that side.
What do you think, Rico?
Sorry. And whatever I make, regardless if it's the astronaut or I recently just made 2 paintings of Chitoharjo and Osceola. All of everything that I make, I mean, Oscar Howe defeated this argument a long time ago. It's all native, so that part is not in question.
A lot of times when people ask about the tradition versus I guess modernity is, for me, it's always it's a feeling of going between meditation and expression. So our people, our culture, our stories, we've got thousands of years of history and lessons to learn from. There's plenty of room to meditate in there, and then there's the expression of our own stories as we experience them today. So I think, and then you can also say that, the traditional artists were once modern artists at their own time. So I think they probably felt the same way, where it was, a little bit of meditation on the depth and reach of the knowledge that has been given to us by our ancestors and their own experiences.
Thank you. Golga, when you think about your work, there's elements of traditional and learning from the elders, but also contemporary elements. How do you wrestle in that, or balance, I should say, not wrestle, balance with those ideas?
I think my artwork I would define my artwork as a contemporary art, because all of these elements that are incorporated are very modern, these elements that I incorporate to my project are pretty much inspired by other tribes, other social media. Going back to last year's AFN, the Alaska Federation of Natives, it's like an Alaska Native art market. There was an elder that came by my booth, and she saw a pair of mucklucks that I made. A muckluck that had elements of ringed seal, deer leather, and calfskin. And it was very contemporary, and she commented that they were beautiful, but also it was another side of her that she said that she told me not to make them, but she was very proud of me, because she said it's not traditional. If people see it, then they're going to see it as traditional. And then from that on, I told this to my friend, and my friend told me that what is even traditional? I mean, our ancestors were utilizing every resources of, their surroundings. And as decades passed by, and more resources came by, a lot of people started to use a lot of store-bought, materials, and some people would consider as traditional work. So that's like one of the questions that I always ask myself: what is tradition? I mean, tradition changes over time. I mean, a pair of mucklucks that we have that are dotted in the middle as well as in the back are considered as traditional. But then, what was it 100 years ago? What was it 500 years ago? So tradition changes over time.
And I love the fact that, when I look at particularly the 3 gentlemen, you're younger, so the fact that you're continuing to wrestle with that, I think, is an important wrestling that we just always, I think, as Indigenous people are, but I love your answer there. That's really
Can I jump
sure.
on that? I asked a question a long time ago about when does a tradition become a tradition? Like, one day will the cell phone in our pocket become the traditional thing to where we pull it out or something like that, And I forgot who it was, and it's a really good friend of mine, and this is terrible to say, but she had said, the moment that I pass something to my children, that's when it becomes a tradition. And I thought that was like the heaviest answer you could possibly give. Because when does a tradition, what is a tradition, and when does it become a tradition, I think are very important questions as we Indigenous people have to sort of answer. Now, this is going to be pretty heavy too. one of the things that I think that we were kind of robbed from with colonialization is that we never really got the opportunity to question our own traditions, what's important and what's not. We got the gift of resiliency, and so we hold on to everything so tightly. But I think that we need to start to question and wonder what is actually important for the future. And not everything is, and I think we need to start to critique that too.
Well, speaking of future, we're coming down here, but what is one thing you're working on or thinking about working on in the future here that excites you? Maybe it's a current project or something that's maybe still forming in your mind, but what's, as you think about your future and the work, Jody, what are you working on right now that, or thinking about?
Well, I'm working on the Trump, I'm kind of old, excuse me. But right now, I'm working on the Trump piece, and I'm working on large tile pieces that I'm going to put together. And on one piece, I have some political statements, and on the other piece, I have my great-grandson in his Indian clothes. So that you've got this whole political scenario going on one side that isn't very pleasant. And the other side, there's this peaceful aspect of tradition that is there, that the youth is still hanging on to, and that is still there. Especially among the Pueblo Indians, tradition exists still yet, and it probably will exist for a very long time, because they're so separated from the rest of the world, unlike other Indian groups. So that we have a tradition that is very carefully guarded. And this is what I wanted to present to the world, was this chaos in politics, in the society that's going on. And on the other side, you have a young girl that has her Indian clothes on, her Indian mantas on, her Indian headdress on, and it seems so solemn, it seems so wonderful and so stable. And the other side, you have chaos. So this is what I'm working on right now.
Look forward to seeing it. That's in Minneapolis, you said?
No,
Oh.
this is for the future.
Okay. Oh.
And Minneapolis, I have political pieces on Bush. I have political pieces on Obama. And I have some very traditional work, and I have middle-of-the-road pieces. So I have kind of clear across the board work that I've been doing for a few years.
Baby. Let's see. Right now, I currently have a piece at the Museum of Indian Arts and Culture that'll be up for 6 months inside of the new Joanne Walzer wing. And then I go to LA September 16th for a small pop-up show that one of my collectors by the name of Naranjo-Turipa got me in. And then shortly after that, in November, Creek Nation was invited to go to the NMAI Smithsonian to display work and express some of our traditions. So that's what I'm really looking forward to. And then after that, I hope there's a break that I can just chill.
It doesn't happen. Okay. Rico, what kind of, as you think about your future work or ideas?
As a multidisciplinary artist, I think a lot of times I practice different skills, but I feel like I'm at a point where I'm starting to feel them kind of converge. And so, like, you know, digital design, product manufacturing, jewelry making, sculpting, I feel them all coming together, and I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I feel them, you know, they're going to click. Wait for that click.
Wonderful. What are you working on, Golga?
So I have a solo exhibition coming up next year on November 25 to January 26 over at the State Museum in Juneau. And my main project is to produce portraits. And from those portraits, I'm going to be utilizing the State Museum as well as the Anchorage Museum in using their archive collections, specifically on Inupiaq clothing. And part of that collection is to let my people wear those collections and let them relive. And part of that is to capture their portraits and not just only Inupiaq clothing, but as well as masks and baskets, and making it more of a modern style of, native identity. Yeah, and then besides that, I'm going to be producing other forms of Inupiaq accessories like Inupiaq bag, a fancy parka, and hopefully 3 pairs of fly handles. So, yeah.
So just a few things.
Yeah.
Well, we have about 5 minutes left, and I've been selfish in the honor of being able to ask all the questions. But if we have 1 or 2 questions, either for everyone or maybe one specific person up here, does anybody like to ask a question? Have a question that maybe you're just dying to ask? Like red or green? Here's one word answer real quick. I'm just curious myself. Jody, what's your favorite color if you had to just pick one color?
I don't have one color.
It's the meanest question to ask an artist. What's your favorite color? George, do you have a favorite color?
Yeah, I think I go through phases, but right now I would say if you use golden acrylics, it would be tight and buff, but beige. And if you go to my booth, which is Lincoln West 772, you'll see the beige everywhere.
Titanium buff. Rico, do you have a favorite color?
Pink.
Pink. Okay, and what's your booth number?
Lincoln West 723.
Golga, do you have a favorite color?
Yeah, my favorite color is red. I'm on Lincoln East 776.
All right. Yes, one question?
Yes, what kind of recommendations or suggestions do you give the younger generation for artists?
Maybe that's Jody. Jody, any recommendations for young artists as they're coming up and building their careers around being an Indigenous artist? What advice do you have for folks?
I think be yourself and be true to what you're doing and present your work and do it with focus. Do it with a goal in mind and be steady and stable and you'll get there.
Wonderful. One more, get the last one. Go ahead.
I have a question for the artists about your thinking about the influence of Dorothy Dunn on the development of native art through time. When I look at work, I think to myself, I don't know that I've ever met an Indian who didn't see a background. And I wonder what that means in terms of what we mean about traditional native art.
Well, a lot of my work right now is actually kind of based on the flat style schools of Bacon College and Dorothy Dunn. I do think aesthetically that these paintings are pleasing. Do I think that they were limiting? Yes, I do think that the structure that Dorothy Dunn had of like paint this and only this wasn't the best option, which is where IAI comes in. They freaking broke down that door. And you see Oscar Howe that comes out of there, he broke that too. Even Alan Hauser, even whenever he stepped into the sculpture of Eleanor. I think that that's important to notice. I really like your comment about that I've never seen a native never seen a background before, because if you look at these paintings, they're just sheets of paper with no background sometimes. And I thought that was kind of a cheeky thing to say, so that was pretty cool. I do think that it is part of Native history. I do think that it is something to definitely study because it paved a road. Whether or not you go down that road doesn't matter. But there is a road for people that do embrace that stuff to go down. Which brings me up to other aspects of Native art that people may or may not like. It doesn't matter if you like it or not. What matters is that there's a road for a Native person to go down. And they can go and embrace that dream. You don't have to. So, yeah, I guess I hope that answers the question.
All right. Jody looks like she's ready to, you want to take a stab at that one?
No.
Okay. Well, we said we would borrow your time for 1 hour, and these artists have to get back to their booth, so let's give them a round of applause for taking the time out today. Wonderful. And thank you all for coming. Really appreciate it. Continue to enjoy Market and all of the fellowship and friends and relatives that we're all getting to see. And just have a wonderful day. And if you have any, want to just come up and visit, that's you're welcome to do that as well. There's a little swag outside. Fill it with your lemonade, and we'll see you soon.